Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we can rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the consent agenda, we will be pulling 8.05 for a separate vote. Are there any other questions in reference to other items on the consent agenda? Herman?
Yeah, is Michelle on? Or is Valerie?
Valerie's here. Michelle is unable to be on. We're trying with the technical difficulties, but Valerie's here.
Yeah, this relates to 6.02.
Yeah.
Can you clarify what's that related to? I think on the expenditure.
What that is related to is we're asking permission because usually when we do budget transfers, we do them, or the board approves them at $10,000 increments. So we're basically asking that a resolution be passed that we be able to transfer $147,462 from our fund balance into the budget.
Okay.
Just kind of in one lump sum, and we'll use that for offsetting COVID expenses.
Okay.
The provision is in case we need, because COVID expenses were unknown, and the governor has allowed to use money in the reserves, and this is actually money that's over in the reserves,
Okay.
above.
Right, this
So,
was our excess
yeah.
fund balance at the end of last school year.
So that was the above and beyond the 4%?
Yes,
Correct.
yes.
This is the this is
Yeah.
what's above the 4%.
It
Okay.
just gives us flexibility if something happens with COVID, very similar to what the board adopted with the schedules and the plans, if we need to change something on the fly because of what's going on.
Okay.
We just wanted to make it official.
And we're currently going through the process of applying for the bond, or
The COVID CARES
COVID
Act,
CARES.
yes.
so that should replace that fund eventually, the money that we're transferring.
We'll hopefully be able to use the COVID CARES grant money to pay for a bunch of different expenses, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you. No other question?
Richard?
I have no other questions.
Mary?
No other question.
Dan?
I have none.
Okay, with the exception of 8.05, do we hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passed unanimous. Now a vote on 8.05 with the abstention of Mr. Kohler. Do I hear a motion to approve 8.05?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 4, 1 abstention. And Dr., it's all yours.
Thank you very much. We have a few presentations tonight. When Dr. Mulford came to me and said, it's been a little while, can we talk a little about special education programs? I said, it's a good idea. We had nothing for tonight, so we figured, hey, we'd put her in. But since then, we've really been working hard on return to school. And so we have another presentation, which I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this are probably interested in. But this one is just as interesting, and there's a lot of very good points in here. So Dr. Mulford will be presenting on special ed, and she will be taking questions after she's done presenting. So board, questions from the board. So if you have anything, definitely ask her, and we will, go from there. So that's not the beginning slide, right?
No, that's not the first one. Did I? Okay. I'm giving it away here. Okay, so thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Pupil Personnel Services Department tonight. I appreciate that. What I'd like to do is start with the cornerstones of special education. Students with disabilities are entitled to what we call FAPE, Free Appropriate Public Education. And it's the role of the Committee on Special Education to determine what is appropriate. Appropriate doesn't mean more than what a student needs. It means finding the right program to meet each student with an IEP's needs. The IEP is considered to be a legal document which includes the student's goals, the student's program, accommodations, and descriptions of the student's needs. That Committee on Special Education will discuss what we call the least restrictive environment for each student. And for some students, that means that they're educated in a general education environment. In some instances, some students are educated in what we call a small class or self-contained class, or in some instances, a combination of both. Evaluations are completed when the district suspects that a child with a disability may need an individualized program. Parents and students, and for students that starts in middle school, are the vital team members that help to develop each IEP, and that process happens annually, if not more often, depending on the child's needs. So what is an IEP? Well, it's a legal document, and it contains the key information that really describes the student. I often refer to the IEP as a roadmap, and that roadmap helps each person who works with that child to understand his or her unique set of needs. When I talk to the special education department, I often say, imagine if this student moved to a neighboring district and they had to start that child's program tomorrow. Would they know exactly what that child's needs are? So that's really kept in the back of everyone's mind when they're developing these IEPs. No two IEPs will look the same, and they're developed and reviewed annually. And there are times when students no longer need their IEP because they've learned those compensatory skills that make them require less support than they had in the past. Another key cornerstone of special education is what we call the least restrictive environment. So every time the Committee on Special Education meets, we discuss whether or not the student can be educated in a general education classroom with his or her peers. All students with disabilities, should be learning the same curriculum and the skills as their non-disabled peers. And that is why the CSE must consider how much time a student with a disability can be educated in the general education environment. At every meeting, there's a discussion about how much time a student can spend in the general education environment. For some students, they might be educated full-time in a general education classroom and have access to a special education teacher for part of their day or their entire day, or an access to a teaching assistant who can help them at different times of the day. So Dr. Fanueli and I talked about out-of-district programs and placements. And at this current moment, we have 24 students in the whole pool of students with IEPs who are attending out-of-district placements, such as BOCES and other specialized schools. One student we were able to bring back into district this year because of the success that this child had been making in his BOCES program. And it's going really well, I'm pleased to report. We are looking at another student to possibly return back to district next year, but that will depend on how the remainder of this year goes. Our goal is to always consider having students return to their home school whenever possible. So the 24 students is about 10% of our students with disabilities, which is a fair amount. It's not excessive in any way, but those are the number of students who require something different than the district can provide. So why out-of-district placements? Well, as I described, we have to consider the least restrictive environment for every student, and sometimes due to the severity of a student's medical needs or their social, emotional, or psychiatric or behavioral needs, the district isn't able to provide that level of support that a child would need in order to be successful. So that's why the Committee on Special Education must examine what is the most, going back to FAPE, appropriate placement for each and every child. The CSE is always evaluating and making determinations about when students can return to their home districts. And in my time here in the district, I've seen many success stories where students have been in out-of-district placements and returned to be very successful. They needed something for a short amount of time that the district couldn't provide. So how do we develop our special education programs in Spakenkill? What makes us very unique is that we are a small district and that we can actually discuss every student with a disability and then create our continuum of program annually in this way. So at the elementary level, the principal and myself, we meet with every special education teacher and we review data, quantitative, qualitative data to talk about the student's progress. And after that conversation, we start to put the pieces together in terms of what will be our program for the following year. It is labor and time intensive, but what makes our programs unique and special is that it's really tailored to every single student within the Spakenkill School District. That would not be possible in a larger district. So now I want to talk about, not just talking about our programs, but actually, special education, there's no real awards that we win for being an outstanding special education program, but I'm going to show you some data that speaks to the quality of our programs here within the Spakenkill School District. If you look at our special education costs, we are ranked 4th out of 13 districts within Dutchess County in terms of how much we spend per student with disability. So we are ranking 4th out of 13 districts in Dutchess County, and we offer high quality programs. And you're going to see that evidenced by our graduation rate and the number of students who receive advanced Regents diplomas. So we spend about $32,000 to $34,000 for student with disabilities and fall in the lower end of the cost range there. Our graduation rate, the blue bar there, this is statewide data. So 65 districts in New York State have an 80 to 85% graduation rate for students with disabilities, and we are ranked 2nd in Dutchess County for graduation rate for students with disabilities. Again, the blue bar shows where Spakenkill falls. Our classification rate, the state average for a classification rate within any district is generally around 12%. We fall between the 10 and 12%, exactly where we need to be. This is compared to statewide data. And it's really interesting because if you look at the districts to the right, there's many districts that have a higher classification rate. And what that generally speaks to is that some districts don't have the resources to provide building level supports like we're able to in Spakenkill. If students are referred to the response to intervention team and we're able to provide something different for a student, then in many instances that child doesn't need to move on to the Committee on Special Education because they're able to get the support that they needed through the building, whether that's speech, language services, OT, PT, reading support. But we're very grateful for the amount of building level support that we're able to provide all students, and that's what keeps our classification rate exactly where it needs to be, is because we're able to help all kids, and they don't have to have an IEP in order to get the support that they need in school to be successful. Our suspension rate is pretty much non-existent for students with disabilities. We are ranked first out of 13 districts within Dutchess County. Very few students with disabilities are suspended for an extended amount of time. With the Advanced Regents Diploma, we're ranked 1 in Dutchess County, ranked number 1. Those you can see to the right, we are the only district that provides Advanced Regents diplomas for students with disabilities. So again, the data, we can talk about the quality of our program, and but when you see the data and where it falls in terms of our ranking, you can see that high quality programs are paying off for students. Remote learning. When we had our return to school committee meetings in the summertime, we knew that we wanted to bring in students with disabilities in more often than students without learning challenges. The New York State guidance said that districts should consider that, but of course, we didn't have a roadmap on how to do that. We had to figure that out ourselves within our district. And that required the communication and collaboration between the building principals, transportation, our teachers, our parents, to try to figure out how we were going to do that. And from day one, our administrative team, our teachers, everybody was committed to do that. We first started to focus on our students in our self-contained classes, the students with the most intensive needs. And then we started to go through all the students with disabilities and determine who should be brought in more often than just in the hybrid model. And I'm really proud and pleased to say that we've been able to do that within every building, and it's as a result of everybody working collaboratively in order to make that happen. There's lots of laws and regulations around special education. We have an extremely dedicated special education staff across the district. Their support, their hard work, along with the high level of detail that we spend on developing every child's IEP, really avoids costly disputes that would be otherwise settled in legal proceedings. Disputes and expression of dissatisfaction regarding special education isn't very typical here at Spack-and-Kill. Over the last 15 years, we've had one impartial hearing. The outcome was favorable for the district. Hearings are costly, and when you invest in quality programs for students with special needs, it's a valuable investment, and there's a multitude of benefits that we don't always see, but come out later when you hear people's stories about their experience in special education. I have 2 testimonials to share with you tonight about that. Tuition students, because our district has developed high-quality self-contained classes, which are attractive to other districts, we've been able to bring in 3 out-of-district tuition-paying students. Right now, we have 3 students at Todd in our life skills program. We have 2 students from Millbrook and 1 from Weebatuck. So we are generating about $36,000 a student extra because we developed a program that was attractive to other districts that weren't able to provide a similar program to what we developed. So I want to just kind of summarize where we're at with the special education department at this time. As always, our federal and state mandates, they require that students with disabilities receive free and appropriate public education. And it's really the role of all the members in the CSE to determine what is appropriate for students with disabilities. We're very special and unique that we're able to program for each child individually here at Spack-and-Kill. And the dedication, collaboration, and communication between our parents, our teachers, and administrators assist in the development of our high-quality programs, and trust among team members. And with all those essential ingredients, we're able to provide high-quality programs for students who need that support the most. So I'm going to share with you 2 testimonials, one from a former student who's now attending SUNY Albany. His name is Joe Belmonte, and he was more than happy to speak about his experience in the special education department here at Spack-and-Kill, and just wanted to kind of put a name and a face and a story to what I've just shared with you, because these are the things that really resonate with us when we talk about what we do on a daily basis.
Joe Belmonte, former student at Spack-and-Kill, and I've asked him to say a few words on behalf of the People Personnel Services Department. So Joe, if you're ready, you want to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mulford. Hi, I'm Joseph Belmonte, or Joe for short. I graduated from Spack-and-Kill High School in 2018. I am currently an undergraduate at the University of Albany studying finance. Let's state the facts. Numbers don't lie, as a side note, but more than that, an average man with a plan is more intelligent and resourceful in the long run than a genius without a plan. I'm sure we can all agree. When it comes to a plan on how a child moves through the education system, it's mostly directed at the parents to get through that process with the child. Ultimately, it's up to the child to excel, and I'm sure everyone can agree. The thing is, my mother has always said it takes a village to raise a child. I do not feel I've always been the best at school, but I've definitely gotten better at understanding the more help, the better. Sometimes when an individual, more so a child, might not be able to ask for help, or the fact that they might not see their grades slipping due to certain things such as attention deficit disorder or things alike, the Psychological Resource Center provided by the school was able to create a specialized approach, taking the proper course of action only through me having an IEP. This plan ultimately helped me excel at school. I'm grateful for having an IEP. I would go as far as to say this is how I was able to use my disability as more of a power today, because I was taught how to take a step back and clear my mind. I've learned sometimes that's all an individual needs. If anyone is interested, the best way I can describe ADD is you are always on go mode, but it is hard to focus on one thing for an extended period of time. When I was young, I thought I just had a lot of energy. I later learned that was not the case. Over the years, I learned to work with this, taking a step back, and this was first introduced to me as an alternate location where I could hear my own thoughts. Through my IP, this definitely helped me the most, and I didn't need help. Thank you.
Joe, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it. And you really have set the bar high for us, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wolford.
Thank you. I would like the opportunity to introduce Ms. Gronke. She is a parent of a middle school student with an IEP, and she would like to take a few minutes to say a few words on behalf of the Spack and Kill Special Education Department. Mrs. Gronke?
My name is Jessica Gronke, and I am a parent with a child in the Special Education Department here in the Spack and Kill School District. My child has been in the Special Education Department since the first grade. He is now in 8th grade in Orville Atod Middle School and achieving educational confidence more and more each day. When we first started this educational journey, we resided in the Brewster School District. I fought to the Brewster Special Education Department every annual review for services my child was in need of and so clearly could benefit from. I made the choice to move to the Spack and Kill District because of the respected reputation the Special Education Department had. My child was struggling and his education floundering when we left the Brewster District. The moment I registered my child in Spack and Kill and his IEP transferred, I had a meeting with Mrs. Lori Mulford to discuss a plan of action, goals, and what services may be able to help. Mrs. Mulford read through the report and reviewed the IEP with me in depth and explained why my child has a harder time in certain areas and how she felt the department could help him in his educational career, something that Brewster District never did. Mrs. Mulford offered to add some services she felt could help my son based on the report she had reviewed. Every annual review since my first meeting has been a blessing for my child and myself. The staff worked tirelessly to analyze and review my son's learning process and are always willing to help in any way they can. The staff make sure I know exactly what goals have been set and how they will strive to achieve them. My son was a D.C. student in Brewster School District. Here in Spack and Kill School District, he is a B.A. student and received one of the Student of the Quarters at the end of the year this past year. I could not be happier to be a part of the district who cares so much about my child's educational career. I am in constant contact with the resource room teachers about my son's assignments and how we can help him move forward and not get behind in this trying time. It's a breath of fresh air to not have to worry about my child struggling in his classes. They strive to make him more independent in his studies and in life in general. I thank all the educators in the Spack and Kill School District for doing an amazing job and teaching the youth of our community.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gronke. I really appreciate your kind words, and I look forward to continue working with you in the years to come. So thank you.
You're welcome, as do I.
Okay, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, please let me know.
Dr. Mulford, just thank you for the testimonials. I thought that was very informative. I got a couple of questions. In terms of parent engagement, at what point are they part of the process? And is it in terms of how you design or inform on your plan? Is it a negotiating process, or how does the parent comes into the process of defining an IEP? Do you kind of
Sure.
clarify that?
So our parents are vital members of that committee on special education process. So we meet at least annually. If we need to tweak the IEP before the spring, then sometimes we'll have what we call a program review meeting to evaluate the IEP to see if we need to make any changes. But one of the things that I think is very special, and again unique to Spackenkill, is the relationship that our teachers and staff and administrators have with parents. Oftentimes parents will just call me, or they'll call the lead teacher when they have a concern. They don't hesitate to communicate. And that's key, that collaboration, the open door, knowing it's okay to disagree, but we can work it out, is essential to this whole IEP development process, because I think a lot of districts are in legal situations because they don't have that back and forth dialogue. Free appropriate education is sometimes, that's the crux of the dispute, is because the district might see a program as appropriate, and a parent might think that their child needs more. And when we can work through that and compromise and come up to a resolution, that's how we like to work here.
I got another question. Now, you also indicated that 3 out-of-district students come into our school district for special ed. Was that capability developed for them, or was that to utilize pre-existing capabilities?
So the inception of that program was really around one student. We had one student who really needed his own program, but we were so small, we couldn't really have a life skills program for one student. And we knew if we could develop something, we would be able to feed more kids into that program. So the reason we developed it, I put something out to my colleagues and said, we're trying to develop this life skills program. At the time, we had 2 students that would fit the same kind of criteria. And then the word got out, and then we got a 3rd student. Unfortunately, 1 student will be aging out of that program next year, but I'm going to continue to try to collaborate in this way with my colleagues, because sometimes BOCES doesn't have what we need either. And I think parents really like having their child in a school environment. So that's where I got started. That one child kind of grew from there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Richard?
Yeah, hi, I appreciated the information, Lori. Just a couple of questions for clarification. So the least restrictive environment, can you just share how that's determined? I assume it's a judgment kind of process, but just a little bit of description as to how that's determined, because I imagine it varies for from one student to the next, right?
Sure, and there's like, I think of like almost like different, like a 3-prong approach. Like we have the psychological testing, we have IQ testing, and we have the academic testing that goes along with our psychoeducational evaluation. And then we have the day-to-day qualitative information that the teachers bring to the table, what they see, the learning behaviors, the day-to-day experiences. And then we also have different quantitative information. We have assessment tools like Ames Web as a progress monitoring tool. We have a program now called iExcel. We have our MAPS and our Pathways program, which we also bring to the table. So when we bring all this information, and obviously parent input and teacher input, to the table, we start to then make decisions what we feel is appropriate. And from there, and like I said, we're always bringing to the table, can this child be in the least restrictive environment, the gen ed setting, and if so, what kind of supports does he or she need? It just kind of, that process just kind of flows, but there's so much information that's brought to the table that you make decisions from those things.
So as you move from the, say, gen ed setting, in a regular with gen ed classroom and then go up, to a more restrictive environment, would the restrictions involve what, aids and
Yeah,
that kind of thing, and
right.
facilities, I imagine, too, and
Sure, so it's a
something-
continuum.
Right.
So there's like on one side of the continuum, there's something called indirect consultant teacher, where somebody's just checking in about a student, just communicating, you need any tips, you need any strategies. And then the other end of the continuum is, say, like a specialized school for kids maybe with behavioral needs. So in between that, there's a lot on the menu. It could be part-time special ed in the classroom, it could be full-time special ed in the classroom, could be access to a teaching assistant for part of the day. So we don't say that classroom has a TA, we say that child has access to a TA. And that comes from that projections process, where we're actually talking about what each student needs in their program.
Great, thank you. And then just one other question, the slide where you showed the classification rate, could you just explain that? I'm not sure I quite followed
Sure.
what that even means and what the graph illustrates.
So with any given total population of a school district, the state education department says you should have around 12% of your total population that would be having a disability. So when you look at that graph and you see all those districts to the right, it seems to me, what I would guess, is that those districts don't have the resources to provide students like we're able to, say through AIS. We provide speech improvement for kids. They don't have an IEP, they don't have a 5-0 accommodation plan. They can get these extra supports because we're able, so then we keep, that's at checks and balances. So that keeps our classification rate where it should be, because we can provide services for kids. In some schools, you have to have an IEP to get something, you have to have an IEP to get something different or something more. And that's why RTI came about, which was that, no, every child should have access to something more, because it should be reserved for students with disabilities.
Great, thank you.
Lori, I want to just thank you for the hard work that you're doing and for just the amount of care and individualization that you're doing, because I think that really reflects what our community is about, the small size and just the respect for each child's needs and each family's needs. And so it was just gratifying to hear about the program and to see that you've gotten such good success. Like, it's amazing to see those numbers of advanced regents diplomas, to see like what an outlier we are in terms of that. So really, really impressive. And time consuming, and also just involving a lot of, like you say, collaboration. So I think that's just so, it's so great to see. I was just curious about if you involve other kids sometimes in a plan to help a child, like to I don't know whether it's tutoring or support, but I remember hearing about that as a good thing. It was a good thing that it seemed like other kids sometimes were sort of part of a support for a child. And so I'm just wondering if that's, when you think in terms of least restrictive environment, if sometimes, I was just curious if that is just somebody being inventive, or if that's like a plan that you do where you try to involve the school community.
Well, that was part of my strategy with bringing in Joe's story, because it's sensitive. Not everybody feels comfortable talking about having a disability, so you'd have to involve students who feel comfortable and confident enough to share their story. In my time here at Spack and Kill, I can think of many students that if they were able to share their story with other students, how empowering that would be, especially when they're struggling the most. It's always sort of in the back of my mind. It's just figuring out how to do that with respecting, everyone's comfort level with sort of sharing. And the way I got these two testimonials, I reached out to two teachers, one in the middle school and one in the high school, and I said, who do you think would be comfortable sharing their story? I didn't even who they were going to bring to me. So I think maybe if we can expand on that in some way. I also think parents would really, knowing you know, when seeing their children struggle at such a young age, when they can see so many success stories, who have graduated with advanced Regents diplomas who really struggled and had to work really hard. That could be really comforting to some parents too. That's always in the back of my mind too. But knowing how to navigate that and go about that, that's the trickier part.
Thank you.
Dan?
Well, this setup isn't very good. And
Sorry.
I don't feel like going to the chiropractor, so don't mind me if I just look forward, if you don't mind. I appreciate hearing about this program because, frankly, I think all of our students are as important as the next, and I'm not sure that we have heard a lot about this in the past. I think this is the second time I've heard a presentation in my time here on the board, so I'm still, unfortunately, not very fluid with all of the terminology, and I'm trying to pick up on it as we're going. So I think one of the things that you mentioned was that in the IEP there's goals that are set and that they're not very measurable, but is part of the measurability of that those students that might return to a general ed setting, or are there any other ways of measuring success?
Yeah, so when I think about the development of the IEP, I think about what we call like the student performance. We call that the present level of performance. And that's really where a child is functioning at that time. And at that point, then we start to look at the curriculum for that grade level. And what are the skills that that child should be able to achieve within that year based on their present level of performance. And so what happens is we start to progress monitor those goals. And that's where those tools come in, like Ames Web, Pathways, iExcel, classroom, just teacher-made assessments. We do progress monitor those goals, and the teachers are required to assess those goals quarterly. And when they write them, they should think about what would be reasonably attainable by the end of that school year, and not set the bar too high, and not set the bar too low. Sometimes that's challenging, but if we use data in the development of those goals, most often the child will be able to meet them by the end review of the following year.
Okay. Kind of piggybacking off of Richard's question with the classification rate, so that's a percentage of students expected to need the programming?
Yes, so the total percentage of students with disabilities in any school district, that's our range, is 10 to 12%, and the state says you should be around 12%.
Okay, so that puts us somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 students, or
Off the top of my head,
sound
yeah.
about accurate?
Yeah, it's actually around 200. This data is from 2018, 2019, I believe. So it's I believe we have around 200 students with disabilities.
Yeah, we're about 1,500 students, so 10% would be 150. A little bit if we're inching towards that 12%, yeah, it would be between 150 and 200.
Okay, so, because I'm just kind of looking at some of the numbers as well. So when we send a student to out-of-district placement, it's in the neighborhood of 32 to 34,000 per student. So that's about $750,000 of out-of-district placement costs. And right now we've got 3 coming in. That's about 100,000. So there's about a $650,000 deficit in there. And I'm wondering if it's something that, if we put a little more effort into and money into additional programs here, would we be able to potentially bring more students into our programs here?
We're always assessing whether or not we could bring students back into district. Oftentimes our students in an outside placement have a very unique need. And you know, as I was saying, with the one student who needed a life skills program, he would have potentially gone to an out-of-district placement because he was just one child who needed a unique program. If we weren't able to bring in tuition students, I might not have been able to develop that program. So, the medical needs, the psychiatric needs, the behavioral needs, we wouldn't be able to program for the students that are currently out of district right now. But it's something we're very passionate about. Like I said, we brought one back this year. We are looking to bring another student back next year. But it really depends upon the child's progress in their program. If we bring them back prematurely, we're setting them up for failure. And that's why we have to make that decision very carefully.
Okay, and to just kind of piggyback off of the financial discussion, are there government funds at our disposal, and are we taking advantage of all of those?
We do receive federal monies for special education, but the programs are everything that we do in the CSE is really regulated and mandated by the CSE. There's not really any way to to really, I guess, cut costs, if you will, because if a student needs a particular program, the district needs to provide that. But I think by always doing our due diligence and trying to develop programs and consider students coming back, that's how we do that work. And actually, currently, at Nassau, Mr. Lynch and I are working with the BOCES teacher at Nassau to start mainstreaming one of our students in the BOCES classroom into our self-contained class. She wasn't ready before, but now we're looking at slowly starting to bring her in for certain things like specials. We've met as a team to kind of discuss a strategic plan on how to go about that to make sure that the child first and foremost is successful in that transition.
Okay, thank you. If anything else comes up, I'll be happy to email you if that's okay.
Sure.
And thank you again.
You're welcome.
I think Dan was trying to get to, are we able to start more programs in-house where we can attract other students from other districts in order to pay for our own children and our own students in-house, just like we did before? Is that possible with some of the other programs? I mean, we have the room in some cases, obviously not in all cases, but we need to start considering other options, because obviously we're not going to get a lot of money from the state this year or next year. So in order to start looking outside the box and finding different ways to grab some finances in order to pay for our own children, I think that's what Dan was really trying to get to. Is there any other programs that you think that we might be able to bring in-house and attract kids from Arlington or Weebatuck or Millbrook or Wappingers that we have our own need for, but then we can bring them in and pay for those needs that we already have?
The challenge with those, I think it was 25 students, is I have a huge board in my room where everybody is, where all the students are. And if I look at the board, there's like smattering of students, clusters, maybe one here, one here, one here. So if I were able to do that in a heartbeat, I would do that. That's why I developed the life skills program. Oftentimes, to be honest with you, the reason we have out-of-district placements is because we can't meet the behavioral needs. Long ago, I did start a behavioral class at Nassau, and it lasted a year because we needed so much support that it was costing more to run that program and the behaviors they were modeling for each other, and it wasn't successful because you'd have to almost have a full-time social worker on staff. You'd have to have a one-to-one aide for each student. So those costs start to add up, and then you have to, is it more cost effective to try to develop it in your building or to send that student out? But that's something that's always in the forefront of my mind, is bringing students and developing a program whenever we can.
Okay. I mean, the more question was trying to attract other districts here. That's really what I was trying to get at.
Okay, like if other districts have a unique need?
That we have the same need.
Right.
You know, that same thing that we did with the life skills. Millbrook had a need, Weebatuck had a need, and we had a need, and we had some room. So you developed a program, you brought them in-house, and now we're paying for our own kid the students' needs that we had, but we're using other districts' money. That's really what I was trying to get at, and
Yeah,
I think
okay.
Dan was trying to get there.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way that we're gonna be able to recoup a lot of our hard costs. I mean, essentially, in the very near future, because of the financial, picture that we're really looking at this point. Are we able to grab these other kids, and are we
Right.
able to grab them in, and just like the tuition program that we have,
Right.
I mean, if we didn't have that already established, I mean, we would be, financial would be a huge picture here, but because of the foresight of the previous administration getting this thing started, and now you running with it and grabbing, bringing more kids in, that's where a lot of our income is gonna come from in the future. That's what I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's where we were trying to get at is, is there a possibility we can bring any more programs back into that we can, even if it's a $10,000, savings, it's still savings, and we're getting our own kid in our district, and we have the ability to run their program the way we want to run their program.
It's definitely a conversation I'll keep having, absolutely.
Okay.
But it's sort of, I mean, my understanding is hard because each special ed kid is about 35,000, right?
If not more.
Yeah, if not more. So it's
Yeah.
very hard, our tuition doesn't cover that.
No,
you
it's
know.
it's not for that, but more for, I mean, some of the special needs will, get up there in price, but if we're able to share those costs with other districts and, bring them here,
Right.
it's just something to think of.
Isn't it to some extent, though, it's kind of a zero-sum game? I mean, other districts are facing financial challenges too, so they're not going to be able to necessarily pay us, to send students here if they don't have the resources to do that.
I guess if our tuition was cheaper than, say, a BOCES,
Right.
that would be more attractive to a district than, 70, 80,000 than, 30.
Right.
I mean, we're sharing a lot.
What
of
is the
our-
BOCES rate?
It really depends on
Depends on
the
the needs.
student, yeah. It can be up there.
Yeah.
I mean, now we've started the whole process of sharing the transportation costs, hey, who do you have, you have somebody going to Westchester, let's combine the buses. So, I mean, a lot of the cost is transportation, it's extreme. I mean, you have the bus, you have the personnel, sometimes a one-to-one aid inside the bus, so. I mean, there's a lot of things to look at, it's just a lot of things to consider. But I think that's where we have to really start looking for our future and finding ways to save ourselves money. Again, if we're not competitive, it's not gonna work.
Right.
So, is there any other questions? No? All right, well, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
presentation.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lori.
All right.
Thanks, Lori. And I think when Lori also spoke to the uniqueness of different students, and I think that's what you'll find, especially in a smaller district, each child is unique and you don't have many of them. And if you think about the one program, the life skills she did bring back, I mean, you saw how much we're getting for each child, but we're also funding the teacher and the supplies and that. So, even that's just kind of
It's almost
a wash, so to profit is interesting and a source of income, but when you're talking about kids, it's tough. You're just trying to find a place that fits their needs. And if you looked at the schools, it's Weebatuck and Millbrook, it's not the Arlingtons and the Wappingers because they have a bigger population, and the uniqueness is less unique because they probably have a few. So that's a battle I know Lori always tries to face, and just great job with bringing the life skills one. It's a blueprint for what I think the board is asking, so we can look at that blueprint and see if there's a way to expand upon it. So.
I always like to keep our kids here, then we have the ability to say, no, this is how we want this done. And, it's just thoughts.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, that's presentation number one. I see Mr. Lynch is standing in the back. He's stretching out, getting ready. So, Mr. Farrell and Mr. Lynch, are you guys coming? Where are you coming?
I'm going to come there, but Sandra, do I take the...
Yes.
All right, so they're going to go to the podium. So let's set this up a little bit. So we took a survey, and a first survey, not the one that just went to elementaries, one that went to everyone. And, the results are on our website. And basically, we looked at that survey and tried to develop plans to keep with our goal with if it's safe to and in the right move to increase in-person time. So really, we've been, tackling that, because we said when we come back after Thanksgiving, if things hold, we want to be able to do that. Now, one caution is as we watch the news, we start to see an uptick in COVID cases and seen in our area. So we still want to plan, and if unfortunately something happens and we have to go full remote, we still have these plans which will be in place, and when we can, we'll come back and do it. So we have to realize that, as we're developing these plans, things start to go up. So I want the public to be aware of that. But it's our intention, as long as we are in person and allowed to be, and we can be, we want to see if there's a way to increase in-person time. So Eric and John are going to talk specifically elementary, and then we will have not a PowerPoint, but a brief discussion on what we're thinking for secondary also. So John, are you going to be in?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Glad to be here with you as always, Mr. Lynch and I. I think we always appreciate the opportunity to speak with the board. I think probably more than ever tonight, just because of what the last few weeks have been like for us. It's been busy. I mean, it's been busy for months, but I would say particularly the last couple of weeks with the survey work that we've been doing, and just knowing at the end of the first quarter, that was really our line in the sand, back when we were talking with folks in August and September. And, the survey information, the first one that was district-wide, and then our more recent one that was just geared towards elementary parents, has been really, really informative and helpful. And one thing we certainly have learned is that it seems to have taken a pandemic to get people to return surveys, because we've been doing surveys in the district for years and nobody ever responds, or a very small percentage. Now people return surveys. We had over 1,400 respondents for the first one, and then the night we sent out our elementary survey, I think within 2 hours we had nearly 200 responses. So what does that tell us, right? It tells us that it's really critically important for families to give feedback, and I can assure the community, and if anybody returned a survey, we've read every word, we've looked at it inside out and sideways. And I will also say that folks have really done an amazing job with their comments, with their feedback. They've asked good questions, they've offered really insightful opinions and suggestions, and it's been very, very helpful. I also think it's been unique. I mean, I'm not aware of another district nearby that is surveying the community in the way that we've been able to. So we're just really appreciative for the opportunity. So, when Eric and I, we spent a lot of time talking about how best to really present all of the information that we feel like we need to at this point. It's really difficult to talk about where we think it might be best for us to go without outlining, where we've been and where we are. So in this presentation tonight, we'll just a quick review about where we were. I'm going to speak a little bit about where we are right now, and then talk about really where we think it may be best for us to go, and then certainly give you plenty of opportunity to ask questions. So Eric, you want to talk about March?
Yeah, so I'm going to start off by talking about where we were, and I think March 13th in this district and many others, we all kind of remember where we were and what we were thinking was about to happen. And I know I, for one, was not someone that thought we were heading in the direction that we wound up heading into. To say that we were caught off guard, like all other schools, would be a massive understatement. We didn't have a vision for remote learning. We didn't have a one-to-one ratio with devices, at least at Nassau. We didn't have the training that teachers wound up needing to have at the time. Many of our teachers hadn't used Google Classroom. Families were in crisis, schools were in crisis, and honestly, although we were really proud of what we did in the spring, everybody worked really hard. We knew that going into the following year, so July, actually June was the first time I heard of people starting to talk about the concept of this virus going into the fall, and hey, we may be back, but in a hybrid. And we knew that we were going to have a chance to improve and to develop and to get better. So that's where we were. And John's going to talk about kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, and just, Eric, listening to you, I'm thinking about the time before hybrid and cohort and synchronous and asynchronous, before those words just became really part of our very common vocabulary. So we spent the summer planning, right, and working and trying to figure out what our options were going to be, how were we going to be able to get kids back to school, how would we do it safely. You know, it was a grind through the summer, and you know where we ultimately landed was we proposed hybrid 1 and we proposed hybrid 2. It seems like years ago now at this point. And you know, ultimately decided on hybrid 1. But the one thing that I guess I want to mention about where we are and that work that we did in the summer was, remember that at that time it's conceptual, right? It's numbers, it's schedules, it's on paper, it's imagining what it's going to be like. It's but it's not real, right? So we came up with hybrid 1, we came up with hybrid 2, but those were just, you know, conceptual. Like I don't know how else to say it. It's different for us now. It's no longer conceptual because we've lived it, right? We know what hybrid 1 is now. When then we really didn't, and it's been an incredible adjustment for everybody. It's been a huge adjustment, students, for teachers, for parents, for families. It was a huge undertaking for all of us. And we've done it the way that we've done it, and it has not been perfect. If we had hybrid 1 to do all over again, there's some things that we would maybe do differently. I'm sure, but I know for Eric and for me and hopefully the community and the staff, like there's a ton to be proud of. And I would say even more to be proud of now than I maybe realized in August. Look, hey, we're here. If somebody had said, John, do you want to bet in August on this date in November that you guys are still going to be in school, I don't think I would have taken the bet. And one of our primary goals at that time was to get kids into school, to meet their teachers, for teachers to meet their kids, for them to get to know one another. Because remember, that was a great advantage in the spring. In the spring, it happened in March, so those relationships were formed. Teachers knew families, families knew teachers, teachers knew students. It was a major, major different kind of scenario. So, you know, throughout the summer, our goal was to do whatever we could to try to get kids in for as long as we could. It honestly would have been a lot easier to not do that. If we had said full remote, you know, September 10th, that would have been a much easier way to go. But I think to the district's credit, we didn't choose that option. And I think the other a major thing, obviously, if we're still here, we've been able to do it in a safe way. Like I feel, you know, our schools are safe, right? Our issues have not been internal issues when we've had any COVID-related things. Like we've managed it, I think, in a very, very good way, and I think that's, you know, a lot of people play a part in that. It honestly would be a really long list. The other piece, though, what we said, as you, I'm sure recall, in August and September was we were going to approach this in an incremental way, right? We started with orientations. Thanks, Eric. We started with our orientation, and we said if we can get kids in and we can do it safely, that when we had an opportunity to increase that, we were going to do our best to try to do that. So that's really where we are right now, right? We asked folks to make a commitment for the first quarter. First quarter is, you know, we're there. So now, right, is the time. And that's why the surveys have, you know, gone out in the way that they have, and it's why we've been doing the work that we've been doing to, you know, keep that promise. You know, we promise it, if we can do this, we're going to try to keep making it better. And that's what pretty much every breathing minute has been about, you know, for the last month. So, hopefully that captures, you know, where we are right now. But the next piece is, you know, where we want to go. Eric, you want to?
So thinking back to August, you know, we talked about going back in a phased approach, and we all want the same thing, which is our kids back all day, every day. And the question, which is really complex, is how do we do that safely? And so really what we've been doing since we've been back, knowing that the current hybrid plan is not going to be what we are going to be in for the long haul, and that we're going to progress to getting our kids back in, we've been evaluating, we've been observing, and we've been having conversations. Hundreds of conversations with teachers. I'm in classrooms every day. I'm watching Google Meets while teachers are doing them. As awkward as that is, that's a big part of what we do. Another thing that we're doing, we're constantly talking about what our colleagues in nearby districts are doing to try to learn from them, both their successes and their failures. And then the last thing, and I'm going to go to the next slide for this, so Don talked about surveying. And while there were many conclusions that one could draw from our parent surveys, and we recently sent out two. One was district-wide, one was just elementary, is that it's really, really clear many parents want their kids in more often, for in-person instruction. So the million-dollar question is, how do we do this? And how do we do it safely? So there were a lot of things that came in the survey, a lot of thoughts, a lot of suggestions, a lot of this district is doing this district is doing that. So when we were kind of brainstorming, how do we get kids in more for that next step? These were 4 ideas, some of which neighboring districts are doing, others are not. And so we just kind of wanted to go through each one of them to kind of break them down for you.
Okay, so first, full days. It definitely was a common theme in the feedback that we got in our surveys, and I'll do my best to, you know, explain certainly where Eric and I land on that piece. Like I get it, right? It seems like that would be the next obvious progression. You know, you've got them in half day. Why not just extend the day and keep them all day? Some neighboring districts are doing that, so I see that comparison. I also know for some families just that schedule might be much more manageable rather than dealing with midday, half day, daycare and those issues. If students were in there all day, in school all day, that could work much better for families. I'll say for me, and Eric and I, we agree on this. We don't think it's the way to go because, well, for a couple of reasons. So if we think about a full day, if cohort A is in school all day on Monday and all day on Tuesday, and those A students are with their teacher, where's cohort B and whom are they with? And the answer to that, we really only have 2 options. One is they're not with anybody for 2 full days, and then you have multiple days in between those full days and when they're back in the classroom. Or the other option is live streaming. So live streaming at the secondary level, certainly not ideal, but much better, we would argue, than it would be at the elementary level. We've talked with a lot of other teachers, a lot of parents, and we know some other places are choosing to do that. We think the challenges for live streaming for elementary kids are uniquely challenging. It's not as simple as, well, stick a camera in the room and off you go. And then if you think about our even younger students, primary age students, what live streaming instruction would be for them and their parents, because you don't stick a kindergartner or a first grader in front of a computer and just leave them there for live streaming. It's not like they're juniors in high school. So those really are our options. Either too many students have no contact with their teacher, or we live stream. And one of the pieces that I would say I underappreciated its value. I mean, we knew it was big, we knew it was significant, but I appreciate it even more now. And I think if we had to pick one strength about our Hybrid 1 plan, it's the fact that every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, kids have direct contact with their teachers. It's not to be, its value should not be underestimated. I mean, it's a major piece. And if we go full days, we lose that. And I understand there are families who might say, don't see that as necessarily as big of an issue as we do, but having that daily contact, even if it's not in person, our remote work that's been done in our classrooms, whether the afternoon sessions or our full remote teachers, is really, really solid stuff. Like we're not just getting by. It's really amazing stuff that is happening during those times. So I think for us, live streaming is not a great option for us. It's okay that other places have chosen to do that. We don't think that's best for our kids. And the idea that they would have so many days in between being in school or having direct contact with teachers also doesn't seem like it's the best thing for us in the direction we should go. Robert, do you?
Yeah, just one thing to add about full days.
Full days, you also want to talk about what would happen if they stayed a little bit extra, what they would be receiving? The students that would stay, lunch and recess? Do you want to?
Yeah, hybrid 2. Hybrid 2. Yeah, so hybrid 2, if you think back to August, we proposed 2 separate hybrid plans. Hybrid 1 was what we went with. Hybrid 2 was hybrid 1, but with the 2-hour extension of the day. Okay, so instead of dismissing at 12 o'clock, we would have dismissed at 2 o'clock. And students within that 2-hour period would receive lunch, because it's during the lunch hour, recess, and special. So out of that 2 hours, roughly an hour and a half of that 2 hours would be lunch, recess, and special. Couple things, that we knocked around in regard to this. In regard to the numbers with COVID, we all see that there's an uptick. And, a general concern about having kids eat in the lunchroom or in their classroom together, with the upside not necessarily being classroom instruction. When we weighed out the pros and cons of all of the models, we didn't feel like the upside of hybrid 2, considering the potential downside, was worth that risk.
All right, so the split schedule, split days, which led to our sending our recent elementary survey. So about 2 weeks ago, just to give you an idea of how quickly this all shifts. 2 weeks ago, I think collectively we thought we had a genius plan. Like we were set. We had felt like we'd overcome the transportation obstacle. We found out, we could make a split schedule work in that way. felt like we'd overcome the cleaning obstacle with shifting custodian hours and moving things around. We felt like we had enough time. We were confident that we could clean the building in between those split sessions in a way that was going to keep kids and staff and everybody safe and keep us in school. And then a couple of things I would say happened. One was the survey. Our most recent survey, we got some really, really good information from it. And one of the questions was asking families if switching to a split day schedule was going to be an unmanageable burden for them. And unmanageable is a strong word. And we got some really, really important, overwhelming feedback related to that, where people just said yes. And remember, it's in the context of that this isn't August. This isn't the first time we've had people make adjustments and changes. People have already done that. They did that for Hybrid 1 at the start of the school year. So now we're asking them to do that a second time. So that was one very important piece in the survey data. Another piece, and to be honest, this was a little unexpected for me, and of all of the questions, I was really interested in this. How much shifting were we going to see if we moved to hybrid? If we moved to a split day schedule, were we going to see many students move from full remote to hybrid because we were adding additional time? Or conversely, were we going to see a shift from hybrid to full remote? And there's quite a bit of movement. I didn't necessarily anticipate that. And you might say, well, all right, so they move, but a large shift in students going from one to another means a pretty significant impact on our schools. It means adding sections, because remember, we're limited by the number of spots that we have in our classrooms. We can fit 11 to 12 kids in our elementary classrooms. We have, some of our remote classes are already very large. So in addition to it being unmanageable to families, another major component for us was the fact we were going to have to probably, change a lot of students' teachers. And through our data, because we're either going to add a remote teacher or we're going to add a hybrid teacher, there's no way for us to do that without totally turning our classes upside down and moving students from one class to another. And one of the things, if we were wondering if we've been in school long enough for there to be strong connections between students and families and teachers, we've been in school long enough for there to be strong connections between students, families, and teachers. That's very evident. So that was a major piece. And then the other
John, just while you're talking with that, we also discovered the goal was to try to increase in-person time, and we actually would have had more people choose remote because of the, what did you call it, unmanageable burden.
Yeah.
So it actually would have not even achieved the goal.
Yeah, that's correct, and it's a reminder of why a survey like this really is so important, because if you had asked me prior to the survey if I would have predicted that, I would have predicted just the opposite. So it was really helpful. And I think the third thing for us was just the fact, that the COVID percentages right now seem to be going in the direction that they're going. So then, we're looking at a really significant overhaul. Like if we go to a split schedule, it turns things, there are lots of benefits, right, to it, but it means we turn everything upside down. We turn everything upside down for the master schedule. We turn everything upside down for families and daycare expenses and work and travel, all of those things. And if we knew we could do that and we were going to be solid for 6 more months, I would say, all right, maybe we do that. But the prospect of doing all of that to staff and families and students to find out 5 days later, maybe that we've got to go full remote, it just, was another piece. So that's why for us, and just a couple of, like, we thought we had it. Like, we thought we were, you know, we were really in good shape, and now we've pivoted to another direction, and that direction has to do with Wednesdays, and Eric's gonna talk about that.
Yeah, so Wednesdays we've spoken about before, and really the three goals in our minds that we keep going back to. We want to add in-person time. Number 2 is one that I always think of, Dr. Fanuelli's slide from the summer. It was one of the bottom lines, and it talked about the irony of a plan that may be more conservative, may actually allow us to stay open for a longer period of time. And we feel very lucky that we haven't had to close down like many other schools. So the second goal is, stay open and stay safe. And then the last one, and I feel compelled to say this, is to really work with teachers who are working harder now than they have ever worked. And I see that at Nassau. John sees it at Hagen. We see it everywhere. In many ways, and I've said this before, every teacher is a new teacher. And this is a totally different language to them, and they are really, really struggling. And we really want to support them and work with them. So we felt really strongly that we wanted to keep some planning and collaboration time for them. And so while adding Wednesdays are imperfect, and every hybrid model is imperfect, we felt like this model checked a lot of boxes given the circumstances that we're in. So this is a version of a schedule that you've seen, because it's exactly the same as what we're doing right now, with the exception of, if you look at the Wednesday column, we would have students alternating in-person days on Wednesdays. So for example, week 1, and if we rolled this out on November 30th, let's say that's a Monday after Thanksgiving, that week, cohort A would come in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Cohort B would come in Thursday and Friday. The following week, cohort A is in on Monday and Tuesday, and cohort B is in on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And we just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Okay? Everything else is the same. And one of the things that we're talking about with our schedule right now is, what can we do with the students that are not in on Wednesday? Because as John said, that's something that's very important for us. And what we're working on right now is trying to provide specials for every kid that is not in person on Wednesday, while simultaneously providing asynchronous assignments for that remote cohort. The full remote schedule.
Could you just back up 1 second? Just a tweak to the afternoon was there might be just a slight adjustment in remote time on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. We're still working on that, but in order to accomplish multiple goals, we just wanted to be transparent with that. Not a lot, I think we're talking 15 or so minutes, but that is also to help the students and teachers to have time. So just wanted to say that, because you had mentioned it's exactly the same. It might be a little bit different we're thinking right now, but keep going. Thank you, guys.
Okay, if we were to go full remote, and whether that would be for a couple days based off of a district decision, or whether that would be because Governor Cuomo tells the county to shut down, this is very transferable. So the way that it would work is, any time that a student typically would have been in person, again, so think of the A kid that is in on a Monday and Tuesday, that time is still theirs with their teacher. Okay, so that, and we have it listed as 8:30 to 11 o'clock in the morning that cohort A would be with their teacher. I would just say this, that's the window of time that we could utilize. However, we're really cognizant to make it age appropriate. Obviously a 5th grader could be online longer than a kindergarten student. And then if you follow that through the afternoon, the opposite cohort, cohort B, would be with the teacher in the afternoon. We're also really proud that we've been able to, when students are not working with their teacher, their classroom teacher, we've been able to plug in specials, teaching assistant support, AIS, and related services. But let's jump to Wednesday for a second. So if we were to go full remote, the plan would be to get both cohorts together again into a Google Meet. And that's exactly what we're doing right now at both Nassau and Hagen. Anything to add there, John?
Just one piece about, that adding the Wednesday of in-person time. So one of the things, there are several, but a very significant thing that I don't know that we appreciated enough in August and early September was what it was going to be like for teachers to have small classes. We're not used to having 11 students in a classroom. So a major variable. The other thing, in our current schedule and in, a hybrid 1+ Wednesday, it's 3 hours of instruction that is uninterrupted, right? We've never had that. Teachers have never had that before. Now, is there a cost to that? Yes, the related services are happening at another time. Music lessons are happening at another time. But instructionally for teachers right now, for them to have 3 hours with, let's say, 11 or 12 kids versus what they typically get, which is less than 3 hours and double that number of students, and with students being pulled out, all of the time, whether it's for AIS or music or speech or whatever. So one of the things we definitely have experienced is that 3 hours of 3 hours of in-person time is unlike anything that we've ever been able to do before, and it's a big deal for us.
John, can you continue speaking about that? Because I think that's a very good point. When we look at other districts, and we won't name names or anything like that, when they have more time in, it's not necessarily concentrated with their instructor. The kids are being pulled, and that. Can you speak to that a little bit about the uniqueness of actually our time, even though it might be a little bit less than somewhere else, and how we value that?
Yeah, that piece I would just say, for folks and for families that are comparing, you definitely have to dig into the details a little bit more deeply. So, if somebody's kids are in 2 days a week, you definitely have to ask more questions about that, because there's a lot more to it than just what is on paper, what the schedule might be. And I think for us, hybrid 1 has turned into, in a lot of ways, the best of both worlds. We've been able to have a really, really vibrant, intense instructional period, whether it be in the morning in person or if it's remote in the afternoon. But the other thing, we haven't talked at all about this, and the board wouldn't necessarily have access to it, but the parents have. Like, what's happening for our kids in specials right now is unbelievable, and the schedule that we were able to develop. But art and music and PE, those teachers are also really doing amazing work. And hey, it's not easy to teach PE over a computer screen, but they're doing it, and they're really doing a great job. So let's our implementation timeline. So look, it's a tight schedule, all right? Everybody has seen that. We know that it really is. And we recognize, that families need information. We've both received emails, fair, honest, emails saying, how do you expect us to eventually make a choice when we have 100 questions and we haven't had the opportunity, to ask all of those questions. And part of tonight's presentation, the intent was to hopefully answer a lot of those questions and give our rationale for why one thing and not another. But I'm sure, hopefully we haven't created more questions. Hopefully there are fewer. But we're planning to create a FAQ document. We know what 90% of the questions are, and we're planning to give our rationale and to to explain, you know, our answers to those questions. And we're planning to, you know, take this excerpt from tonight's board meeting and be able to push that out, and we're shooting to do that on Friday. Next step would be to get our choice form, and we're choosing that language purposely. It's not a survey, that is a choice form. We're going to be asking folks to make a choice on that form. And we're going to get that out as early. We've got Tuesday here. You know, we're going to shoot for earlier. We think the longer window we have for that, the better, because the survey comes out on Monday doesn't mean you need to respond to it. So the larger window we have, we think the better, because if folks, after our FAQ and our recorded presentation, if they still have questions, they need the opportunity to be able to talk to Eric and me and ask us those questions before they make their choice known. And then the dates just for student and staff shifts. And then first day, you know, we're shooting to start on November 30th. The only caveat I would say for that is, and I'm not expecting this, because if the board and the district, we choose to go in this direction, and we add Wednesday, it's not such a substantial change like our split schedule was. So I'm not, but I could be surprised. If we choose to go in this direction, and that option is on the choice form, I'm not anticipating a whole-scale change. If there's a whole-scale change, and we have a lot of kids move from hybrid to remote, or remote to hybrid, then we have a much more complicated task on our hands. And if that happens, I would be asking Dr. Fanuelli to consider maybe pushing that deadline out a week. If that does not happen, if it goes the way, you know, I'm thinking that it would, if we go down this road, then I think we should be good to go for that November 30th.
John, could you also speak to the choice form? Is we are looking to have families make the decision for the rest of the school year. Can you speak to why and that sort of thing?
That was another, you know, very common question. It's a good reasonable question. You know, these are high stake decisions for families, and the question, you know, it really comes up to, we committed to the first quarter. Is there any reason why? You know, why can't we just commit to the second quarter? And the honest truth is we just can't keep trying to do this on a quarterly basis to potentially turn everything upside down. And, you know, before in a few weeks, we'd be sending another survey. So that there's that piece. The other piece is just not imagining any type of scenario that is going to allow us to choose something else. Like what would happen 6 weeks from now or at the end of the second quarter that would cause us to say, well, maybe we should go to a split schedule, or maybe we should go to full days. The only thing that we're hoping is going to happen is that we're able to get kids in every day, you know, 5 days a week to get back to where we all really want to be. So, Dr. Fanuelli, does that address that question?
I mean, we battle that, but the amount of resources used to where we are right now, I mean, we almost feel like we're back at the summer, but for good reason. We really wanted to see how this went, and the incremental approach was really what we talked about from the beginning to really learn. But I just wanted the public to hear that. Obviously, if there's an emergency or some sort of case, we will always listen to that, and I think we've done that with the first quarter.
We have, without a doubt. And now, anybody have any questions? We would be glad to do our best to answer.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be definitely a lot of conversation about these options. And I was wondering, you know, from parents, are you kind of foreseeing, instead of just sending out a presentation or frequent asked questions, do you plan to maybe have a call-in meeting, a forum, where parents could call in so you can have a dialogue and be able to address them, all their questions at the same time? I mean, if you have a forum of parents that can go in, then at least there's a group that can be on the same page. I mean, it seems like the frequently asked question, well, I got this question, now I got another question. It seems like you might lose time with that, you know, I mean, have you given thought to that?
We've considered it some. I think one of the challenges, and I said it to Eric today, if I could put everybody in my cafeteria and be with them face to face and manage it that way, I would jump at that opportunity in a second. You know, there's the idea of managing something like that in a Google Meet would certainly be challenging, not insurmountable. I think one of the things we've talked about is if we put out an FAQ, we had this presentation tonight, like have we reduced the questions that might be out there? And I guess we're not going to know that yet. We could certainly plan and do something like that if the board or collectively we felt like it was a good way to go.
I think when we spoke about this, yes, we really, tonight is a big night. You know, we really wanted to explain it, and this piece is going to be recorded for people to watch. Now, we want questions, you know, and the principals already know this. If there's an elementary question, ask your principal, email them, contact them. They've been getting back to people all along. We've just hoped that we can answer the why to a lot of, you know, the rationale was given tonight on why we're choosing what we're choosing. Knowing that, yes, if things open up, like he said, if we can go, you know, more, we will. It's the social distancing piece, you know, it's the rules that we have to follow that really are at play here. Which is why we're saying we want the choice for the rest of the school year, because until those social distancing rules are really changed, you know, other than flipping everything with like the split session, which we're considering, how to get more kids in more, you know, there really isn't a way. We're making a conscious choice not to extend the days for the cohorts for the reasons given, you know, because really it just would be giving lunch and recess, which there's a value to that too, but there's also the drawback of the limitations of, you know, the health risks involved in that we don't need to take, while still giving the cohort who's home access to their teacher. So there's a lot of parts to this that, you know, and I think, you know, both Eric and John did a good job of explaining that. So that's the rationale. So if there's question as to why we're choosing what we're doing, we hope that tonight says that. But there still might be questions of, well, you know, more individualized, you know, based on a student, that we would want the principals to have direct contact with parents to answer those questions.
Okay.
Any other questions, Ron?
No, I just think that, you know, with the condensed timeline, you know, speed is of the essence, and so I'm thinking when you have that, you're able to answer more immediate. I mean, I'm just thinking many parents do probably have a lot of questions after tonight too, and the vehicle now is just to kind of speak directly to the building principal, and so I don't know, you know, we'll see, so.
If it does become overwhelming, we will have to adjust.
Okay.
And that's, I think John said it best, it'd be great to have everyone in a room and just talk it out. You know, we just can't do that at this moment, but we want people to ask questions if they have a question, to talk to their principal, because they really would know the child and be able to do that.
Okay.
Richard?
Yeah, I have a couple things. Appreciate all the work that's gone into this and the level of detail. It's a big undertaking, and it's not, you know, we all know, and I think the community knows, it's not something that you've just been thinking about recently. I mean, this has been an incremental process all along. I know that the Return to School Committee has been meeting frequently and more frequently lately, you know, so this has been a process. I fully understand that. So the question, I imagine you've been getting some questions already, so I'm just curious to know what's the level of redundancy in those questions. I mean, that would lead to the FAQ idea, I guess, right? Are you seeing some overlap, redundancy in the questions? Is it, you know, kind of coalescing, you know, that way up to this point?
Yeah, so because we hadn't declared
Yeah.
that Wednesday was what we were going to propose, the questions have not come in about Wednesdays yet.
Yeah.
I would say the frequency in regard to questions that I would say I get the most of, why not full days?
Yeah.
because we have neighboring districts, multiple, 3 of them that are doing full days in various different ways. And then the other side of the population that is emailing saying, hey, the numbers are getting worse, why are we bringing kids in more?
Yeah.
And so we're definitely getting it from both sides, and I'm getting those emails. They trickle in a couple each day.
A narrower question and then a larger question. So if the Wednesday plan, I've looked at the calendar, I'm sure you have, the Mondays that are holidays, because I know we've handled those up till this point, or you've handled those up till this point by shifting the Monday to Wednesday, in those couple of weeks in the fall. Any sense of how that's gonna, well, one cohort A, I guess, would lose, in cases where there are weeks when a Monday is a holiday, because you wouldn't be able to shift. Say that were a week where the B cohort was scheduled to be there on the Wednesday, you wouldn't be able to shift them, so they'd get shortchanged. And is there a greater frequency of Monday holidays? I would think,
Yeah, I
than
think
others.
what we could do, so if we're locking into this for the year, rather than us looking at it monthly or quarterly, as we've done in the past, to try to make it as equal as possible, it gives us the ability to look at the calendar for the rest of the year.
Right.
And just switch some of the days when and if that's necessary.
Yeah. And then the last question I have is I'm sure is a paramount concern, but is it your sense that this is going to be sustainable for the teachers? Because I think that's a real priority, right? They've settled into this rhythm. What do they think about this?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. Sustainability is a word that we use a lot and think about and consider. I'm not going to pretend like it's intense right now, and it's intense, and because it's unlike anything they've ever had to experience. So, of these plans, do we feel like it has our best shot at sustainability? For me, yes. Yeah.
I just want to interrupt. But I have my phone here. I got a text. So there is a chat feature, apparently, that's on the YouTube site of this being live right now. That was something that wasn't supposed to be enabled because we are unable to man that. So there might be people asking questions, and I don't want them to be upset if they're not addressed. So we definitely will have a forum. I think one of our administrators put something on the chat to send it to a certain email address, so that we can get to the questions. John, do you have something about that?
No, just is there a way to capture those questions in that
saved.
chat feature?
Is
So
the
that
chat saved?
We will get that information. I believe
Seeing the chat.
on the chat we asked them to send questions to the Board of Ed at Spack and Kill Union Free School District.
Thank you very much.
I won't say what administrator did. It wasn't me. I'm just getting it here. But I want to assure that
Well, those questions.
I
are
do not
going
want someone to get
straight to you.
upset that they're asking questions
We're not
that we're
gonna
not
do that,
able
that's
to
right.
answer. It wasn't designed that way. But what Mr. Lowe said is maybe we based on the questions coming in, we could definitely have a night where we could, similar to the forums, if that's something that we need, that is okay.
Absolutely.
I just don't want people to be upset that they're asking a question, asking a question and no one's going to answer it tonight. It's just not set up that way. But we do want the questions, so we, if there are questions that need to be answered, we could put together one of those forums after we finish up here tonight.
I just want to add to Dr. Horvath's question. So we talk about that legitimately every single day.
Sure.
Like, is it sustainable for teachers? Because if teachers are not well and they're struggling, it definitely trickles down to students, and we don't want that.
Absolutely.
So the answer is, we don't know. And we are trying our best to work with them. It was a big reason, frankly, that we really liked the split day, because it eliminated the remote component for teachers. So they would see both cohorts each day in person.
Yeah, and you asked about the shifting because of holidays. That's a piece, right? So when we made a decision for the first quarter to shift those holidays and have Wednesday be an in-person and a remote day, I think the right thing to do. It was the right decision at the time, but it did have a cost to it. And that cost was, those were 3 chunks of time that teachers did not have for prep and planning. And prep and planning is a premium right now, so that was not insignificant. No doubt about it, best for kids, and we would all recognize that, but there was a cost to it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the amount of effort that goes into this. I just think that's, as I see it, a huge priority. I mean, the teachers have to be able to have time to plan. I know from my own experience teaching remotely, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes into it, and it is intense, and that can't be underestimated. And it's something I see. I'm sure a lot of people don't necessarily see. I think they're probably getting a little better sense of it as we get further and further into this. But I'm very aware myself, and I think that needs to be a priority as you're making it. I fully agree. I mean, that's a huge priority, because if craft these plans, to deliver this instruction, and if teachers aren't able to sustain it, it's all for naught. Really.
Dr. Albrecht, this would be a good time to say, our teachers have been working amazingly, and there's a core group of teachers that are working to try to, come up with plans, and the amount of hours that they have to put those hours in on top of, what they have to do in the day-to-day. There's a lot of logistical pieces to this that I think the board sees, that I don't know if everyone else sees, but there's just a lot of time and energy, and it's really kind of wonderful to see, because they're doing it. They're doing it to try to create, the best possible plan we have. So, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I think there's efficiencies too. I think, people are learning, I'm sure, and how to deliver the instruction more efficiently, but, the curve just keeps increasing, I think, and I'm certainly very aware of that.
Any other questions, Rich?
No, I'm done.
Mary?
No questions.
Dan?
Could you just explain what the schedule would have been on split days if that was the option? Because I didn't get the hours on that. I may have missed it.
Yeah, so we didn't outline the split schedule, but yeah, we can certainly do that. So what we were proposing is that students would be in 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and it would be cohort A in the morning, cohort B in the afternoon, and the morning session would have gone, I think, to 11:05 without looking at, and then the afternoon session would have been an equal amount of time in the afternoon.
And on the Wednesdays, the alternate Wednesdays, is that the one where we were just talking about maybe taking 15 minutes out of the afternoon off?
Not on the Wednesday. That would potentially be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So the afternoon remote block on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday will be shortened slightly.
Okay, and that's for planning?
For planning.
Okay. I guess this is more of just a comment than a question, and I'm going to try to pick my words very carefully here, but I think the community fully understands the stresses of the administrators and the teachers, and I just think it needs to be said that the administrators and the teachers understand also the stresses on the students and the families that are going through this as well. We're under a lot of stress and pressure and working very hard to make these things work for ourselves as well, and it's very difficult. So I don't think we need to respond to that, but I just wanted to make sure that was said.
Sure.
I would like to respond to that. I think that really was seen in the survey with the split sessions. When Eric was speaking about, the number one email coming in, a lot of it was, hey, where did this split session come? This was kind of out of nowhere. We're not ready for this. And they were right. It did come out of nowhere. It was that's why we surveyed, and people need to realize when we survey, there isn't, we're not surveying, already have decided something. You know, this is really to get a feel for, you know, how the community could feel about it. And honestly, it was a burden. You know, that's you know, although it sounds great, like, and we like the way it sounds, you know, with 5 days a week, in the family structure, that's tough. I mean, I have children. I know everyone here, most people here have dealt with that or are dealing with it now. You know, that's tough. And I just appreciate the feedback we got that was very important. And it was calm, and it was just saying, look, this is what I'm going through at home. And it's hard for us to do that. That's a piece of why we arrived where we arrived, because we really felt that. You know, we felt it before, but we felt it with this. And people are looking for normalcy. They're looking for patterns, you know, to keep. They have, you know, I talked to one family where they had, you know, maybe the grandmother watches a kid one time and it's a neighbor another time, and then, you know, to find, you know, how to do that, you know, at a moment's notice or in a short time. You know, we felt that. You know, the Wednesdays keep the structure almost there, just kind of adds Wednesdays, you know, every other week, but other than that, it kind of keeps the structure, and but it still gets kids in more. You know, if you're that kid who's in, I mean, you're in those 3 days with the focused time. You know, so that's how we got to that. It's really from feeling the stress of the community. It's hard on everybody. I appreciate you saying it's hard for the teachers and administrators, but it's hard for the families. I mean, it's hard for the kids. I mean, they want to be back. They want normalcy like everyone else, and it's hard. And we're going through a tough time now. You know, publicly, as a politically, you know, as a country, in dealing with elections, and really the uptick of COVID is all happening now. So this is a tough time. So I just remind everyone to you know, stay with us, you know, and if you have a suggestion or something, to let us know. But, you know, we are at a pivotal point now, I think, with a lot of things happening at once, you know, and the COVID piece is a piece too, because you look at each day it goes up, you read the Poughkeepsie Journal, and, you know, there's more cases, and you look at surrounding counties and Connecticut, which is real near to us, there are red zones. So we know that this time is tough right now. Thanksgiving's coming up, and you read reports that if you gather with your family, it could spread, and people are feeling that. So, I mean, we're in a tough time now. So everyone, you know, we need to take a breath, you know, ourselves included. You know, tomorrow being a day off, you know, for school, I think could be good for everybody, you know, especially the students, you know, just taking a breath, and families. But I'm glad you brought that up, or that comment, because it is so true. But what's making us succeed or being able to do it is because we're staying together, and we're talking to each other, and we're trying to figure out what's best. And it won't be best for everybody. So what they just suggested won't be best for everybody, because there's so many different viewpoints. As Eric said, you know, his two top emails are, let's come back less or let's come back more. We're just trying to balance everything. And I think this is a good way to balance everything. And once we get through this, you know, if we can come back more, we'll do that. Like, this isn't like, all right, that's it. And you know, we will do that. It's the goal to come back. So, but I think we need to settle into something, you know, so parents don't have to come up with these life choices and trying to figure things out, you know, every 10 weeks or less. So thank you for bringing that up.
Any other questions, Dan?
Yeah, I got a follow-up. Can you comment, like, in terms of the student body for each of your respective schools, their compliance to wearing face masks and also social distancing? Have they been very compliant? And then the other question is, during the first quarter, has there been any cases where, I mean, I don't know whether that can be disclosed, that came upon the schools?
Mr. Lowe, what was the last part of your question?
Well, whether you actually had any exposures in the school.
So I mean, if it's all public, it's on the code. We've had 4 since we started. There's a dashboard, you know. So and they've all been reported. The schools have been noticed. There's actually articles in the Poughkeepsie Journal about it. We've never had to really had like that lengthy shutdown or anything to that nature because of it. And some schools have. You know, I know Beacon's gone through it, and other schools have gone through it because of that. You know, are we knock on wood kind of people? It could very easily happen, and then we'll communicate it when it happens, but we haven't had it yet, and we're trying to avoid it, but, you know, it keeps getting, feels like we're getting squeezed, and it could happen, but there's the dashboard, it has to be reported, so it is on there.
Okay.
And I think his other question was,
Yeah,
how are the students doing with the
I
masks?
mean, yeah, we thought and talked a lot about that over the summer, and the answer is, I don't know how, at least for Hagen, I mean, Eric can speak for NASA, I don't know how kids could be any better with that piece. Like they're amazing. It has not been an issue, and we thought students wearing masks and mask breaks and all of that piece was really going to be hard to navigate. It is not proven to be. Kids are doing an amazing job with masks, and they are with social distancing. It's like we're safe. It's just how we need and want it to be. Yeah, and I mean, NASA, it's been, like we were thinking with kindergarten, first grade, and I think you've said they've been amazing, really, like better than they really should be. Like they've been great.
Any other question? No? I think Dr. Pennyroth has said it. The entire goal that we've always shot for is more days in school. And like you said, the concern is the noose is getting tighter and tighter around the amount of increases in the virus. And now going ahead and changing everyone's schedule for a possibility of just another couple weeks, I think that's the big concern to everyone, not, you know, administration, staff, and the parents, trying to figure out how to make it work. So I think, you know, slow and steady is the best thing that we've done so far. We've done from the very, very beginning. We've always had that goal. We want more in, but we're going to do it safe and we're going to do it slow. So I understand there's going to be a lot of questions. Please feel free to, you know, send them out, get them to us, and we'll answer them the best we can. Again, it's not going to be perfect for everyone. We know that, but we're going to do what's in the best interest of every student here and staff and administrator. So again, please feel free to email us, and if something changes, you know, everything is always looked at again, and everything is that there's some type of an emergency situation where your situation has changed, always bring it to your building head.
I want to reiterate that. You know, I actually was checking my phone because someone texted me again. You know, really, I think there were some parents on the chat feature that were upset because at some point I think they were being deleted because it wasn't supposed to be being, you know, it wasn't an open thing. So we want to hear the questions. So again, utilize either emailing your principal or emailing. I think what someone put on the chat, you know, for us to get those, we will answer them. I think people were upset that they want, you know, in the olden days, they almost wanted to be here. We could answer that, but we can't do that. But we will get to every question, you know, if people have them. So just want to reiterate that again. Don't want people upset by that.
Okay. If there's no further questions, thank you for all your work and everything that you've done to bring us to this next level. And then we'll take it from there and see what happens.
Thank
It'll
you.
work.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
So it's almost like there's a continuation of this presentation. Don't think it's over. That was the elementary. Mr. Doherty's here, and I know that Mr. Malpasher is here remotely. Theirs is a little bit more straightforward and didn't quite have as many bends and turns as the elementary. So this should be, I think, an easier discussion to comprehend and understand kind of what happened. And I think, again, a way to increase in-person time at our secondary level. So Mr. Doherty, do you want to start?
Sure. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us tonight. You know, two words I had at the top of my presentation were two that were mentioned, which was sustainability and manageability. And that's what we were thinking about when we were looking at going to hybrid 2. And it's not too different from what was originally planned of hybrid 2 back in August. So kind of just a couple of major points of it is it would be 4 days a week that students would be in the building. Cohort A would come in Mondays and Tuesdays. Cohort B would come in Thursday and Friday. Wednesday would be a remote day. In terms of thinking about what the day should look like, we wanted to learn from hybrid 1, because hybrid 1 was a way for us to see how mechanisms worked, and we learned a lot of lessons from hybrid 1. We learned that we had a break that we saw was necessary for kids, that we couldn't just we couldn't just do a full day, that really isn't sustainable. We were doing 30-minute periods during the remote day, and we were doing 40-minute periods during the hybrid day when they were here. And what we found was, and we talked about this at board meetings, that we started to pull back on the hybrid days because the 40 minutes with 3 minutes in between periods really wasn't sustainable, especially for the remote kids. And at any day, 70% of the students are remote. It's either 100% are remote or 70%. That's what we were looking at during hybrid 1. So the schedule that we have for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday would be, for when they're in school, would be 30-minute periods as opposed to 40. So that's a change. And to kind of think about how that ends up spreading out during the day, for instance, like currently our studio art class begins at Todd at 7 a.m. So with the hybrid 2, instead of starting at 7, it would start at 7:10. So it's kind of pushing that back a little bit. And then the day ends typically at Todd at 2:25, and it would end at 1:15 at Todd. So it would kind of bring the day a little shorter. When we think about what's best for the education of students, we think of not just the students, but we think of parents, and we also obviously think of teachers, which was mentioned already. So we think that that's a good way to make it sustainable. We've been, I know Mr. Malkashir and I have talked. I mean, I have been really proud of what our teachers have been able to do, what our students have been able to do, and what our parents have been able to do. Over the last week, I was I was observing 6 different classes, and I've got to say I was impressed with all 3. I mean, and many times to me the education miraculously was really very similar for the student at home, and that was really impressive. So those are the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The Wednesday, we're looking at having a delay. So in other words, it wouldn't be a full day. We feel that everyone involved, especially mostly students, but also teachers and parents, it would be good for them to have sort of a bit of a break on Wednesday in terms of the amount of time, especially on at the middle school level. So as opposed to 30-minute periods at the middle school level, they'd be 20-minute periods on Wednesday. The high school still has 30-minute periods, but the day's starting late. So both for Todd and for the high school, the Wednesday would have sort of a delayed opening, so they wouldn't open right away. Mr. Malkashir, and he can talk about this when I'm done, one of the big things for both of us, but much more at the high school, has been homework. And really trying to build a schedule that we feel gives students some time. So it could be homework time. It also could be time just to not have to look at a screen. We know what that does. I'm particularly concerned at the middle school level. I know even for me as an adult, looking at the screen. So we're trying to build something that we think is sustainable and manageable. We don't want to, we saw that the 40-minute periods were pushing students, and at a certain point, it's sort of less becomes more. Where if you're really trying to push kids too much, you're not going to get what you're looking for. You have to really look for the sweet spot where you get the most out of the amount of instruction that you're doing, and that the kids can actually retain it. The other thing that we're thinking about is, both during every day, there is some time for teachers to get together, because it's really important. Quality instruction requires, for a hybrid model, teacher collaboration. Like teachers need time to collaborate. And we've been really lucky because of what we've mentioned with the COVID numbers. We're in the building every day. That is not the case in many districts in Dutchess County. Some districts, the teachers have never been in the building, or they're just starting to get into the building. They've been working from home the entire time. So our teachers are in the building every day, and having that time and seeing the results of that. Like I said, over the last couple of weeks, really seeing just great instruction, very proud of what the teachers have done. Again, very proud of the students. I mean, the maturity of the students that I've seen is just, there's a lot that's being learned. I know that there's a lot that's been lost during the pandemic, but I think in retrospect, we will look back at a time and we'll see that students individually, and also I think, you know, the education system at Spack-and-Kill and throughout the country as a whole, there is going to be a lot of positive things that come out of it. So, you know, looking forward with Hybrid 2, you know, both Mr. Malkashir and I see it as something that is sustainable, that is manageable, that will provide kids time, it will provide families time. It's not going to be pushing people, because a lot of what we've seen is the social emotional piece. And if kids are, if their social emotional well-being isn't honored, they even, you know, you can throw as much curriculum that you want at them, but if they're not open because they're overwhelmed, they're not going to be able to learn. And I've been, you know, we've seen that, and we keep making adjustments, and we feel that the Hybrid 2 is going to be a plan that can really sustain us. And it'll be something that if we need to go to Hybrid 1, or if we need to go to fully remote, depending on COVID, we can do that pretty easily, and we have flexibility. So we feel, you know, I personally have felt really good about the work we've done, and I feel confident about, you know, how Hybrid 2 could work for both the middle and Steve, if you want to talk about the high school, anything I missed, you can jump in. Hold on,
hang on, Steve, we gotta raise your volume here.
down.
1 second.
You're whispering.
It's on high.
Could be on his end.
Oh. Hang on 1 second. Oh, there you go. You got it now. You got a different volume thing now, so make that louder. Try now.
All right, how's that?
Much better. Good.
Much better. All right. Good evening, everyone. How are you? I have to concur with everything that Dan said. Looking to put together a schedule for Hybrid 2, we wanted to be respectful to both the kids and the teachers. And like Mr. Doherty said, we learned a tremendous amount from going in with Hybrid 1. And what we learned was that the days that the kids are in, the hybrid days, are very stressful both for the students because they're going from class to class, 3 minutes in between for the whole day, as well as the teachers. So going to Hybrid 2, I think that we've built in the opportunity for students and teachers to have the appropriate breaks, you know, the appropriate time that they need to either catch up or have time to plan with their colleagues. So, you know, I really hope that that this is a schedule that people embrace. You know, I feel personally very good about it. So looking forward, you know, I think that is a good option for us. I'll also concur that, you know, we have 3 different excellent schedules, no matter, you know, what is called for, whether it's fully remote or, you know, if we have to be cautious like we are with Hybrid 2, or if things are going well, that we can bring kids in more for the Hybrid 2. So, you know, like I said, I feel very good about it.
Thank you, Mr.
And I'll
McIntyre.
take any questions.
So just to be clear, you know, we're proposing, and Dan and Steve jump in, Monday and
Yeah.
Tuesday would be cohort A, Wednesday would be full remote, delayed opening, and Thursday, Friday would be cohort B. So
Right, the middle school and the high school are very similar in their schedules. And like Dr. Fanuelli said, Monday, Tuesday at the high school, we would have a reverse 1 hour delay where we would end an hour earlier on Monday and Tuesday, and then Thursday and Friday. Wednesday would be a 2 hour delay, give students an opportunity to catch up on work or sleep in, as we know is important. And yeah, I really think we did a good job with it. And given the opportunity, I hope it works out well. I have full confidence.
So why don't we open up to some questions? Mr.
Yeah.
Lowe, is that your hand?
Yeah, that's, hey, Mr. Bellinger, how you doing? This one's for you. My question is, have you gotten any feedback, especially from students, where they, given the fact that they into already a structure in terms of instruction, say, hey, we really want to maintain the status quo, where they don't want to go to more days? Have you heard that at all?
I apologize if that was a question for me. I had a hard time hearing.
Okay.
I can answer that. Steve, and you can jump in too as I'm talking.
Sure, I didn't hear the question.
So Mr. Lowe was talking about
Particular high school.
or at the high school, or the kids already settle into their schedule and not look to make a change. When we did the original survey, we surveyed the secondary students. And we basically asked them, you know, if we increased in-person time, would it be something that you would stay with and why? And the answer was yes. What Steve has told me, and I'll let him speak in a second, is that the 1 day sometimes is deterring kids because it's just not enough, but maybe the 2 days creates a little bit more of a pattern where you're coming in 2 straight days. Steve, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I agree. I think what is so important about the in-person days is the relationship that the staff, the teachers, myself, you know, the other administrators, you know, the secretaries, custodians, everybody had to have an opportunity to develop a relationship with the students. And this has really been a challenge for us. Only seeing, you know, only a portion of the kids, you know, 1 day a week. The more we can see them, the more we can interact, the better. The research is so consistent in terms of teacher and student relationship, along with attendance and performance. So, you know, the more we can interact face to face, I think the more successful our students will be.
Okay, thank you.
Richard?
I guess I'm just wondering, oops. I'm just wondering, Steve, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I'm just wondering how the guidance, you know, program is going, given that the students are in there, you know, only, you know, 1 or 2 days a week, switching to 2 days a week. You know, how's that going? Especially as, you know, for the older students, the seniors, you know, getting into college application season and so forth. You know, if you could just speak to that a little bit, I'm curious.
Yeah, sure, Dr. Horvath. So, obviously, I would think in person would be the best, you know, in any kind of counseling, guidance kind of format. Right now, that's not always possible. So, our counselors are meeting regularly with students that don't come in or they don't have the opportunity to meet with face-to-face remotely. And we do the same with parents. Honestly, if we have a big concern and we're not hearing from the student, either I or Ken Lewis will go with Steve Doherty and we'll do a home visit to touch base with students. But yeah, I mean, counseling, I think there's tremendous value in terms of being there person to person. You know, my background is school psychology, but given the circumstances right now, unfortunately, we can't do that all the time. But we do, in those circumstances, meet with students and parents remotely.
Thanks.
And also, Dr. Horvath, we still have RTI. Those are the meetings that we have every week to talk about students that we have concerns about. So that hasn't changed. So we still talk about students as regularly as we ever have. Just the way that the interventions look may be a little different than they have been in the past.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Mary?
No questions.
Dan?
I think I have a few thoughts, and I'm just trying to get my head around them right now. I'm a little concerned with the amount that seems to be getting pulled back. If we were to have 30-minute periods on A days for the cohort A, Monday and Tuesdays, I guess in theory we're talking about, if we have 9 periods, that's 90 minutes a day different, so that's an hour and a half, times 2 per week, so that's 3 hours per week, times 10 weeks in a quarter, times 3 more quarters left. That's an awful lot of hours that are getting lost where the kids could be getting a little more education time. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of why we're cutting down from 40 minutes to 30 minutes. It's a 25% reduction. It seems like quite a bit to me.
Would you?
Okay, I honestly had a difficult time hearing you, but from what I understand, you're asking about, you're concerned about the reduced number of contact minutes in the schedule. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, Steve, that's,
Okay.
that's the question.
Okay. So what we learned from Hybrid 1, to be honest with you, is that the amount of screen time for the students that are remote or hybrid and off on that particular day and following a regular day schedule was exhausting for both them and for the teacher. I'm not going to lie and say that given our circumstances right now, the schedules that we have, and the way that we're instructing, that we're able to cover as much curriculum as we typically do. I would say that would be reduced by 35 to 40%. It's just the this, you know, being on the screen and for the students, and the teachers trying to balance the students that are in front of them and the students that are remote. You're not actually getting more out of having more minutes of instructional time, I don't believe. I really think that everybody needs somewhat of a break in between to breathe. And I hope that makes sense to you. I'm not diminishing the importance of contact time. I'm not diminishing the importance of the number of minutes that the students are with their teachers. It's just in the reality that we have right now, it does become exhausting being on the computer the whole time. And everybody that I know, teachers, students, parents, have kind of voiced that, and that's something that we really have learned from Hybrid 1, which I think is very valuable.
There's really no breaks in between for a student at home. It's 3 minutes, so they just go from
right.
one Google Meet to the next. And really, if you think about the school day is the full time. We have found that the remote kids were being let go before the 40 minutes because it just wasn't sustainable. So just now puts it all in where everyone's there for that time. And then there's a little bit more time in between classes so that, you know, a student can use the restroom or go. And actually teachers were having a hard time when they had back-to-back classes, logging off one Google Meet and going to the next Google Meet, and still talking to like the student or two that was there for that one time. So everything you said, I think Steve kind of nailed it. I think it's our concern too, so it wasn't done without, you know, really deep thought about the use of those minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fanuelli. All points, 100%, yes.
I just want to make a quick comment, you know, on that question, because I understand the question, but I think there's a perception sometimes that a minute or 5 minutes of in-person time equates exactly to 5 minutes of online time. And I certainly have found that in my teaching experience, that's not the case, you know, at all, really. I mean, there's dead time when you're in person in a class, you know, kids getting settled in, kids getting ready to leave, kind of talking that goes back and forth between, you know, kids in the classroom, the kind of, you know, lower key rapport that goes on in person in class. That makes, you know, a 40-minute in-person class, I think, much more sustainable than 40 minutes online. I've certainly found that in my own teaching.
Right.
So you know, it's just a perception that I've certainly come to sort of understand that, you know, it's not a one-to-one correlation, I don't think, in-person time to online on screen time.
I agree.
It's the same kind of thoughts we had around the elementary, extending the day a little bit, but it wasn't, you weren't getting the same bang for your buck, if you will, you know, because it just, at a certain point, I don't know who said less is more or more is less. That seems to be what we experienced. That's what we learned, you know, and that's what the kids told us, and they're checking out after a certain amount of time. So that was what we've learned behind that. But I mean, I'm glad you asked the question because it's definitely something we'd want to address.
Yeah, I still find it very concerning. That's just my opinion, I suppose. But with regard to the A and B remote Wednesdays being 20-minute periods, I mean, I tend to remember short periods like that in live education when we had snow days or you know, snow delays weren't very effective. So I just kind of want to get at your ideas on how you believe that a 20-minute period will be very effective.
Sure. So, you know, thinking about the 30-minute periods on the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, as an educator and as somebody who has been watching it for the last 3 months, you know, I look at the 30 minutes as being really a, you know, we've seen on the remote days it's worked very well. So that's what we're currently doing. And we saw that seems to be a spot where you get the most instruction done. And like it's been mentioned, trying to push it beyond that, I think begins to take away from it. Thinking about that Wednesday, I certainly, because of the nature of hybrid and the nature of remote, I think that a 20-minute period is different than it would be like on a snow day, because most of the time when you have 20-minute periods, it's usually because of something that's going on, right? There's an assembly or there's a snow day. But I'm very confident at Todd that the teachers and the students will make the most out of that 20 minutes. I've watched teachers make all kinds of adjustments in how they're doing their instruction. So do I think that the 20-minute Wednesday would be something that would be not instructionally sound? No, I think it's going to be instructionally sound. I think that it's going to be successful. And I do think that the students do need the time. Like I've said, having more time, if the student, it's like a sponge, if the student can't absorb because the sponge is dry because they've been looking at a screen for 3 hours, you have to build that in. So, looking at, and this is something that's new. I mean, nobody's done this before, nobody's hybrid taught, and there's a reason. Nobody would do that normally. But now that we've done it for 3 months, I look at the Wednesday 20-minute as being something that I think would actually increase learning and make better instruction, even though it's less time.
So one of the thoughts behind the hybrid one was that Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday, that there would be more opportunities for subs and that there was more opportunities for shared custodial services and those things. So are we finding that that's not necessarily a need at this point? And is that why we're able to now have Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, both buildings open at this point?
I could answer that. With custodians, we felt good about that we'll be able to do that. That's something we learned. I think they became more efficient, not that they weren't already, but, once we got rolling, they're able to do it. The subs will give us a run for our money. We think we'll be able to manage it, but there is a point where if a lot of people are out, it might be difficult. That was really the one thing. That was probably the last thing that we talked about as kind of lingering over how to solve that. So we think we can do it, but that's based on absent rates at the moment. That could change. But we also felt that if the absent rates really climbed super high, we probably will be remote anyway. But that is a concern. But we think if that was the case and we didn't, if we weren't able to do it, then we wouldn't be able to bring kids in more. And clearly, what we've been hearing is we want, the kids themselves are saying it. So, Steve and Dan have been doing a little bit of a dance, to make sure that happens. We talked about strategies. Ken Lewis, the assistant principal, has developed some strategies to try to make sure we have subs lined up. And that will be something we'll be monitoring, because that, it's an astute question, because that is something that is on our radar, and Steve would say it too. It's on his radar. We think we can manage it, but if we get an outbreak and a lot of teachers are out, it would be tough.
Right. And I agree with everything that Paul said. And one huge saving grace that the district office has afforded us was the opportunity to hire resident subs. If we didn't have that, we would really be in bad shape. So I sincerely appreciate that, and I'm sure the other schools do as well.
So I guess my last one would be with regard to Wednesdays. If both buildings are planning on being closed on Wednesdays, maybe there's an opportunity then for alternating A's and B's on Wednesdays in the secondary level as well. Has that been thought about?
Similar to hybrid one, of looking at how things go. It could be something that we haven't, Steve and I haven't discussed that, but it's certainly something that we can see how it goes. If you remember back in August, one of the reasons why we went with hybrid one was to make sure that it was sustainable and that it was manageable, and it is. Due to a lot of hard work by a lot of people, like I said, students, parents, and teachers working together. So is that something that could possibly, we haven't even, Mr. Malkshire and I haven't even talked about it, but certainly it's something that we could look into,
I would say it's been discussed. The one thing with the secondary level that's different than the elementary level is the teaching of the hybrid student and the remote student at the same time. So keep in mind at the elementary level, there's a remote teacher. That type of planning has just been, the elementary planning is difficult too, so I don't want to say one or the other, but that type of planning, and that's what we hear a lot. The hybrid and the student together, the different modalities at the same time. I know some of our teachers here on the board, that is a point that teachers need time to collaborate in order to make that happen. So Wednesday will afford them that. I know that Dan or Steve talked about kids sleeping in because it's a delay. Teachers will not be sleeping in. They'll be in on time, working on things. Actually probably working with kids and things of that nature. So I think if this gets up and running and it's successful, I think that's definitely something that we could look at, but there is probably a factor there that we don't know how it's going to play out. But it is a good point where maybe that could be the next incremental step if this gets implemented successfully.
Okay, so basically then it's an option that could be on the table for, say, a later date, but it's because the elementary we were talking about not really changing anything after, if we go with this alternating Wednesdays elementary,
Well, we were
that's
talking
probably
about
it.
not changing, going from hybrid to, if we're tweaking a system, almost like what we're doing with the elementary, adding the Wednesday, we don't expect to have to redo all children's teachers. So if by adding a Wednesday at the secondary level, all the changes we're proposing now won't affect won't be a teacher change. So a student won't have to change a teacher because the teachers are teaching both. There is flexibility because of that. The commitment we had said to hybrid or to remote at the elementary level, and it's still at the secondary level, but you could kind of toggle at the secondary level more easily because it's the same teacher. It's not just the child who wants to switch at the elementary level. It might cause other children to have to switch from their teacher that aren't even asking to be switched, because you just can't do that. You need to set it at one time. So that's really why we had the commitment for the rest of the year. But also that we don't see a huge change in structure the rest of the year unless we're all just coming back, and then that's an easy change, right? We just come back and the teacher they have will be their teacher. But that's a big reason. And John, did I answer that correctly, as far as the concern with that? When we had split schedules out there and we saw the change that might come in, I mean, every child's teacher, I don't say every, but a good number of them could have been changed. And we don't want to do that. We don't think that's educationally sound. And the families don't want to do that. Some of the emails were, I might want to do this, but if my teacher has to change, I don't want my kid to change the teacher. So that's something really to consider too. So thank you for asking that question, so we're able to address that.
That's it? All right. Any further questions? No? All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Boxer.
Yeah, if I could just end with just one thing very quick. Dan and I have talked about this. I've observed 12 teachers, at least at this point, this year, and Dan has observed many as well. And I am so impressed with what they're doing. They're using the technology that the board has supported to provide the teachers really effectively. And I'm really blown away with how they're dealing with the kids at home and the students that are in front of them. Because all of the 12 teachers that I've observed have been in that format. And I think you all would be very proud. And if anybody wants to come in and observe with me, I think that would be great. But you should feel really proud of your faculty and your staff. And I just wanted to end on that positive note.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
All right. Any comments from the board? Mary? Nothing? Dan? Nothing?
Sorry.
All right. Comments to the board. We had one correspondence in reference to the surveys being not posted at the time. They are posted now. All the information's online. And that's all I have for correspondence.
And I know that the return to school agendas are also on there also. Should you go to me? Back to me?
Oh, yeah.
All right. There was definitely a lot here today. So, I asked the board to really let things sink in. we really, these plans will be asked, similar to the other ones, to kind of have the board approval and the board seal. We do have a board meeting 2 weeks from today, so it's before Thanksgiving. We definitely want to get the feedback that's coming, from the community and analyze it. You've really heard a pretty in-depth, I think we really tried to give you what we're seeing. And really the input from the board will be very valuable, to hear thoughts about how we are moving forward. We're also going into the time I said before where we don't know what's going to happen with COVID, so it's we're entering a time where we might do all this and cause a little bit of mental thinking on all this, and we might have to we come back full remote. So I just want to make sure people understand that, because we're following the trends, and even if it's we could just get if we have a COVID case in a building, it's just going to cause things. So I want people to realize that. However, we thought a lot of this at the beginning of the year, right? And we needed to test systems, and we said if we test systems and it works, we want to come back with more. So I feel these plans do that. And even if, unfortunately, something happens where we have to go full remote, when we come out of it now, I think we're so much more wiser of what to come out to. So I think kind of this mental activity of now talking about what we just talked about today will serve us for the future, even if it can't be enacted on the 30th because of something out of our control, because I think it's going to set us up. But really, the board needs to really do some thinking of their own and come back with any questions we have or you have for that. I just want to thank everyone again. This is hard, right? And I feel bad that people were trying on the chat feature, which is something that we never intended to have. We didn't have up ever before because that's not our mechanism. It is a new YouTube channel, as we know, because we wanted to correct that so people could see this. So I do apologize for that, but we do want your questions, and we will talk about ways to make sure we answer them, and maybe other forums. So I want to thank the community. I want to thank the students. They really take the survey, right? They took the survey, and we appreciate that feedback. I want to thank our administrators. You're here all the time. I text and email them at crazy hours, and they respond. So I'm very appreciative of that. I do want people to get a break, but I appreciate when things are going. And thank our teachers. Steve said it nicely. We're doing things that I don't know if everyone else is doing. I don't know if you could quantify it because it just has to be seen. They are, just utilizing everything at their disposal. And that classic example is we couldn't find document cameras, and they took some lab equipment and fastened it to it, and then you start to see lab equipment in English rooms because it's, I'm just proud of that. But I also know that it's just unsettling whenever change comes. So, I just thank everyone for hanging in there. And we really are trying to listen and trying to come up with something that works for everyone. And this is where we are right now. I do want to pivot and just talk about next Tuesday, November 17th. This is a nice thing. It is School-Related Professionals Recognition Day, which is kind of cool. This is a lot of different professionals in our buildings, between the TAs and assistants, secretary, like a lot of people would be involved in this. So this is Tuesday, so we want to recognize all the work that they are doing, right? We just recognized a group of people, so this is another group. They actually have a day, so I didn't have to come up with it myself, but they deserve it. They are doing so much. They are being asked to do things that they've never done before, and work with, and they're up to the challenge. And I know that one of the captains of the group, Ms. Baker, is setting up to have a food truck come to thank them for, for everything they do. So I just wanted to make sure that works. It's just everyone, bus drivers, grounds, maintenance, like everyone who's, a school-related professional. So it's nice that we have days where we can highlight that. It has been a lot, so I think I've spoken enough. So unless there's any questions,
I guess that's
that
it.
is my words.
Again, send in as many of your questions as possible, and they will get answered. And with that being said, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So move. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 0, 5-0. Thank you. Have a good night.